Okay, we're now live. Welcome anybody that's coming on here. We'll just give it a minute to let people come on and we'll go here and start working through this uh, on here. So nobody's on yet, so that we can just hold up a second. Let me do this. We got one. Excuse me a second, everybody. Okay. I tell you what, Josiah, why don't you introduce yourself? I have one thing I have to attend to here, so I will be right back. And introduce yourself, and we'll finish this a little bit when I get back. Thanks.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm Josiah Ampian. I'm running for House of Representatives here at District 16B. That's majority of.
It looks like Josiah dropped off here. We'll have to get him back. Um, I'll explain what tonight we're going to be talking about various subjects. I am the CD7. Uh, um, Representative, sorry, 321. Okay, and then Josiah gets his camera on, we will be fine. So,
Sorry, cut me out there when you left.
okay, sorry about that. Then the people got to see my messy office. But anyway, we have people here, and um, my wife just changed the lights here so they don't see my messy office. But anyway, I'm the candidate for CD7. My district goes from basically Iowa to Canada and from Little Falls to the Dakotas on here. And I'm running against Michelle Fishbach. And Josiah, what's your area?
My area would be most of Candy, County. The only portion that isn't in 16B is down near like Lillian, that kind of bottom square. So
Okay, so sounds good. Now, people, you can ask questions in the comments on there, and we will try to answer them, but we'll just probably get started a little bit here. Uh, with housing, that's when I know that we have one of the biggest problems nationwide, which I could work on and locally on here. And I support the $50,000 to $75,000 bonus for first-time owners and veterans coming back on there, which is part of the program that we would be talking about next term, assuming uh, Kamala Harris wins on there. But our biggest problem is we have housing, but it's made for too many rich people. And the second thing is we don't have enough construction workers to put it done and do the repair on that type of information. So what we really need is to make sure that we bring in enough people into this country uh, through immigration. We need to make the borders safe, but also we need to have the capacity to bring in needed people to work because we don't have enough workers. Josiah, what is it? What do you see down in Candy, County?
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the same thing with working, But I personally, I think the housing portion as well. I personally like the idea of bringing more incentives to businesses, construction businesses, to build low, like affordable housing. Because a lot of them, there's a decent amount of apartments going up and houses going up, but a lot of them are being built for that market that we're flowing into. So by the time that they build them, it's already prohibitively expensive. So I think getting incentives in there for those construction businesses to make houses that, even if it's smaller in the number of bedrooms, it would still free up housing in other areas, and getting those more starter homes out for people, at least making them affordable so they can start building equity and get into the market. That's kind of where I come from there.
Well, I agree with that on there. And with the housing that we need to worry about on here is the fact that, yes, we need incentives to build the smaller houses. One bedroom, two bedroom,
Mhm.
no more than three bedroom, not these mansions that we're seeing on there. We need to make sure that because it's true, the big houses is more profit.
Yeah.
We've got to make sure that the construction people make a profit on the houses that they have. We have the workers to put up the houses on there, and we work our way through this type of stuff. Now, one of the other things is, if you noticed, I'm a little older than Josiah here, uh, but so I may not be able to stay in my house for a long time, and my house might need fixing up, but right now it would just be uh, making it look nicer, but it's perfectly livable. But when I have to move from my house, we need to make sure that we have a place for me to move to that I can afford on there, so a worker can move into my house on there. So if there are any comments on any of the people that are online, I see a few on here, we'll appreciate it at that time. But tax incentives, payment incentives for the builders, uh, ways to make it affordable for the regular people. One of the things, so let's say a house is $200,000. If we give them the down payment of say $50,000 for that house, that means their payment will be smaller.
Yep.
We got to bring the interest rate down on there, and we can possibly do that. And it has to be a combination of the federal and the state on here to work this type of information. If there's anybody here that needs to think about that type of information, we'll take a comment anytime now. So one of the things when we're talking about this type of stuff, Josiah, is um, if we do this type of stuff that we're talking about, it's going to take some tax money.
Mhm.
What's your position there?
Yeah, and I think, you know, from what I've seen, I think I see the incentivizing building houses as a short term. That's maybe like a 5 year push, right? Um, because eventually we want to bring interest rates down. Eventually we want to have enough capacity where the market stabilizes a bit more. Um, and hopefully, inflation isn't going to go up as much as it has been going up. Hopefully, we can bring that to a mix. So that's where I'm kind of, and why I focus on those incentives as well. I like the first time home buyer programs, and I think those should stick around for good because those are just good programs. And honestly, I not 100% sure whether they're being utilized to the full extent that they could be, but I do like having those in place. And I mean, if we got to a scenario where we had a program for first time home buyers and nobody was using it because nobody is a first time home buyer, I think that that would be a pretty fair scenario.
Yeah.
So that's why I look towards more of, hey, you know, if we pay for something just to boost local housing, I think when I was crunching numbers, it would cost taxpayers in Minnesota like $4 per taxpayer just to do a kind of small boost to all the counties for programs that would incentivize lower mortgage housing to be built.
Okay.
So
That sounds good. $4 sounds great to
yeah,
me. Uh, so, and you know, what I have noticed a lot is that there are people that want to move out to rural Minnesota,
hmm
and they don't have any place to move.
yep,
They have to have a place to do that. Uh, and whether it be apartments, whether it be a house, single family home or a townhome, that's what we have to work on with that type of information. So, uh,
and a lot of these builders too. I don't know if you've seen much from like building inspectors. I see a lot of building inspectors on YouTube. They're really fun to watch. But a lot of these newer development companies, you have an inspector go through and they're building them big, they're building them expensive. And then an inspector comes through and they're not even doing half of it right anyway. So it's kind of like that quality needs to be there. I'd like to get back to a place where we can have some more quality homes for starter homes to help move people into. So
sounds good. Let's talk about another little topic about healthcare. Okay. Uh, well, since I'm running federal on here, uh, we could improve the Medicare for all. We could work on the Affordable Care Act, improve that as much as we can. What can the state do?
yeah, I'm not particularly invested on running anything terribly hot on universal healthcare at the state level. I think that's more of a national issue personally, but definitely Medicare. Making sure that we're supporting that and keeping that funded. There's a lot of people who rely on that for what they do, and I think just keeping that going. I am a little bit worried about more of this kind of conglomeration in healthcare that we're seeing, um, and some of the things that came out, especially during COVID. I know there's been a lot of pushes for more decentralized healthcare in Minnesota. So more like, here's a home and then they put one CNA in there for the 24/7 to take care of like four people, three people, whatever. Not a big fan of that, just because the cost to the taxpayer for it is pretty high, and the quality of what I've seen put to that. I know a lot of times we talk about staffing numbers, right? What's your ratio of CNAs or nurses to patients that you can have? And I'm not really too invested in getting to that conversation, but I do think that some of that care at those more rural areas, since we don't have a whole lot of big giant facilities, you have more of, hey, if you have 3 people in one house and you're a CNA, and then someone freaks out and now you have to go care for them, well, the other two's quality is going to suffer. So some of that is kind of what I'm seeing. I don't have a whole lot of stats or things to get into, but I'd certainly be interested in getting more into that kind of institutional, more, I guess, larger facilities, rather than more dispersed for rural, at least. And getting away from more of those conglomerates that we're seeing like Health Partners, Centricare. They're just kind of eating up everything. And I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but I feel like my quality of care has gone down a little bit from that and gotten a little bit more impersonal. So
Well, a year ago, I was listening to a speech by the head of the Nurses Association in Minnesota, and they were talking about the Sanford, Minneapolis with the Fairview merger, which got turned down.
Yep.
And they said, "How are you going to handle rural areas?" And they said, "Telemedicine."
Yep.
And she said, as soon as everybody in rural Minnesota has high-speed internet, we can talk about telemedicine on
Yeah.
there. So, and we do have a question there. Did you see that on the site?
Yep, I did. Yeah. So local packing plant. So businesses giving. How do you feel about that, AJ? Businesses giving, and I do want to point out too here that we just got done with Keith Ellison, going in with that farm up. I think it was near Painesville that had some problems with housing their workers. So
Hmm. Well, what happened here in Long Prairie is a business wanted to build a an apartment building and wanted some tax abatements on there. People don't understand abatements, but uh, in that case, both the county and the city turned it down. The company did end out building or planning to build a 60-bedroom apartment building here in Long Prairie on there. They didn't necessarily need the abatement, but it would really be great if we had on-site daycare. We've got 2 meat plants here, and a lot of women work there, and single mothers need daycare on there. Uh, so if we had daycare at the meat plants and at the businesses, and we had apartment, because right now the meat plants here are bringing in buses of people to work because we don't have enough housing in Long Prairie. So the more business that do some of the housing is great, but we have to have inspections and being completely different than a lot of Republicans that I've talked to. We need the regulations that we make the place nice for the people living there.
yeah, and I don't know if I trust a business to care for the housing. Personally, I was in the military for 6 years, and let me tell you, if they owned you and they owned who you're working for, and they also owned where you were sleeping, there were a decent number of problems. But I do think there's some room for conversation there for how that kind of goes, and
Yeah.
I would feel more comfortable with more kind of inspections or third party inspections to kind
Yeah.
of help make that a reality.
In
So
the case in Long Prairie, the company was going to help build it, but the um, it was going to be managed by a third party and turned over to a third
gotcha.
party.
Yeah, that
So,
sounds like that could work. Yeah.
okay. So, okay.
Let's see here. Nursing homes. Yeah. Whew. That's a rough one too, because I mean, and I know a decent number of older people who aren't moving into nursing homes. and really kind of sticking it out. Um, and some of that kind of comes down to family dynamics, but I think with nursing home staffing, that's going to have to come down to more, I guess, state inspections, I guess, because it seems like every time one of those something wrong happens, it's someone was complaining and they complained to the county and they complained to health inspectors and they just complained and complained, but then it took them like 5 complaints to have it finally run down. Also, Kathy, I do want to say I do support telemedicine, but there are some things that physically require people come in for. So, but I do think telemedicine is a good adjunct, and I have used it in the past. So,
Well, I use telemedicine too. There's two
mm,
things about it though. I have high-speed internet,
yeah,
and I also know how to use a computer.
yep,
For people from the VA, which does a lot of telemedicine here, I've had to have people come into my office. I let them use a computer here or use their computer here with my high-speed internet. And if they have trouble getting into Zoom or Teams or whatever they're using that day, I show them how to do that. So it's a matter of education and high speed in there.
mm,
Uh, One of the things my opponent, when it comes to nursing home, says that we need fewer regulations so the nursing homes can keep it open. And during the debate, I told her the first senior person died because of lack of care. I was going to put it right on her plate. She didn't necessarily like that.
yeah.
So, on there, and so we are, we're getting a few likes here, but on that. So, on the, yes, access and equipment.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we're talking about here. But I do know my wife works in a nursing home in there, and what the thing that she has said is she's a manager, and they cannot hire enough nurses, period. They've had a job fair and nobody showed up, and they were given what I consider a lot of money as incentives. Still, nobody showed up on there. We need the workers, we need the people, and they need to own a pay. She actually lost a nurse because the nurse could earn twice as much as a bartender as she could being a nurse.
Yeah.
So if we need to support the nursing homes, we need to have them regulated, and you need to have the people in there that are working to do the jobs that are well trained, and we get the people trained in there, and we need to pay them enough that they stay there.
Yeah.
And that's
I
part
know
of it. Go ahead.
my sister's my sister's a nurse in the cities as well, and she was director of nursing. So I hear a lot about that issue as well. And one thing that really stuck out with me too was that more travel nurses, because it's one, if you want to be a nurse, you can be a nurse, but then if you want to be a travel nurse, especially during COVID, that was just hugely. Also about not enough CNAs. I will say, CNAs do some really dirty work, and it's not everybody can stand. I've heard stories of people, it became a normal thing to them just to have people dying, dealing with their bodily matters, and they weren't getting paid very well for that either. They were getting paid more than minimum wage, more than McDonald's, but it's still when you're comparing, okay, I can go work at McDonald's and get paid a little bit less, or I can go work and I have to deal with like life and death and bodily fluids every day, and it's just grueling work. That's really rough. But I think that I do like some of these kind of training programs coming out. I know locally here in 16B, there's more incentives for like truckers or meat packers. They're forming up some training, so to
Mm-hmm.
try and fit that need. How do you feel about that?
Well, all of these training programs, truckers can earn a very good living, and we don't have enough truckers. And the fact that we don't have enough truckers is impacted inflation.
Yep.
Because we don't have the supply chain that we need to do that. Meat packers, during COVID, I ended up buying a freezer, and we bought a pig and got it, butchered them there.
Mhm.
But it was hard to find a butcher that was certified, and I'm really glad that the state of Minnesota has started putting this into their technical schools, like here up in Wadena and up in Staples. I'm sure you have it down in your area, in your technical school.
Mhm.
Right now, they're doing it, a lot of it with a moving truck, but they're setting up personal places on there. So all the training that we can get is what we need on here. We need good programs for apprenticeship and carpentry, plus training in carpentry. We need good apprenticeship in plumbing, plus uh, training in plumbing. We need a good apprenticeships in electricians. Uh, and so those are all types of things. And I think our first step of making the first 2 years free for people earning not enough money. Uh, yeah, well, somebody worse spells worse than I do there. Um, but anyway, so we need to make sure that tech schools have the funds to do it, that the students can afford to do it, and on there. And we also have to make sure that, you know, it's important to go to college and it's important to go to tech school. Both of those should be equal based on what you want to do and what uh, people need to have done on here. So we got to balance it between work and some of the things. I tech school wouldn't have done me any good because I'm a mathematics person and a computer person. The tech school would have helped with the computer programming, but at the level I was working at, I actually needed college. There are people that need that type of stuff, but we also have a greater need. And as far as the work is concerned, I believe that the tech schools and the college, the first couple of years should be free for all the state schools, and we need to make it available to as many people as possible. So, what's your position on the fund the first 2 years of school free?
I think that having it for, I think having a in needs program would be good. Is how I would kind of phrase it. So, like we were talking about, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, the meat packers, truckers, all those kinds of things. Having stuff for that would be good. I don't know. The first 2 years is good. I mean, there's the what is it, North Star Promise program, that's already kind of out there for the first 2 years of college, and there's also things like PSEO and stuff with that. So as far as making it across the board, I don't know if I'd agree with something like that, but I do agree that we need something in place for making some of those more tech school applications or people going for 4-year degrees, making their first 2 years. I could see that being a good route. So
Yeah, and well, me being a STEM person, the first 2 years of 4-year college, I think it's important to increase the number of people in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So
yeah, a big piece to that, very personal to me. So I kind of work a lot with cybersecurity, and it's very hard to find someone, especially in rural areas, that deals with cybersecurity in the same way that you have it out in cities. So I imagine we're in this situation, right, where we're going towards having more cybersecurity issues, more ransomware, more cyber attacks. Um, and as this kind of balloons up, we're seeing more targeting towards smaller businesses and rural businesses, or even like rural, like farmers. Um, and even on a personal level, like getting those scam callers, or trying to get money from elderly people, like those scam calls of, "Hey, I'm your grandson," or whatever. So I'd like to hear your take on where we're going with cybersecurity, because that's something that is very dear to me, and I think we are kind of heading towards a point where the government is going to have to get more involved, because it doesn't seem like a whole lot of. It seems like companies look at it as more of a, is this where's my acceptable level of risk, when really it almost seems like we're getting towards more of a state and national level uh, of problem.
Well, I taught cybersecurity in college. One of the things in there, but first of all, it was awareness. I Once a week I'll have a senior come in that has let they get the little beeping thing on their screen, beep beep beep. Do not turn off your computer. Call this number. You have been hacked, or you're at risk. And about once a week, I have somebody that calls that number and lets them onto their computer.
Yep.
There's a training problem, and I've advertised it in the newspaper. I've advertised it in the radio. I go around and give speeches about it on there. There's that area. Uh, just making sure the seniors are trained. And, I work with the Todd County Citizens on Aging and giving speeches there with that. But also, and I've also put up some stuff for like a couple lawyers in town. I put up the sonic walls on there for them on there. But from the national thing, cutting down the amount of security specialists in our U.S. government uh, is counterproductive. It's going to bite us in the rear really soon here on there.
Yeah.
And even I don't know. I don't know how well the rural electric cooperatives are protected here. I don't work with them. I assume they're working pretty well. Maybe you know more about that than I do. But I do know that one of the things is that they have been attacking our infrastructure as far as the electrical and the telecommunication industry. And the companies that are smaller that need this type of stuff need more. And the more training we can give people, the better. Probably the most insecure thing in both of our offices is you and me, because on that type of thing, the unawareness. At the college I was at, which taught security, somebody clicked on a link and all of our data for the college was encrypted, including our last round of backups on there. So school was down for basically a week, and the teachers actually had to think. So,
Yeah.
it was kind of bad in there. So that's where that needs to work. Okay, we're only getting questions from one person. Is anybody else here have any questions or comment? We are getting likes. Thank you for that. But we appreciate a little bit more to talk about here. We've talked about housing. We've talked about senior housing. We've talked about health care on there. I'm pretty sure we haven't had, the two different things, me being federal and Josiah being local. It's not like Alabama or Florida where they turn down the Medicare dollars for the state. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want that to happen. So,
Yeah.
but and let's just go a little bit further. Property tax.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about with property tax? It was really funny. I had a officer in the military who would tell me, he would come in and just random days he would come in. He was from, I think, Massachusetts or Connecticut, somewhere on the East Coast. Um, and he would come in and he would say, property tax is theft and taxation is theft. kind of that kind of is what stuck with me. But you know, property tax, I mean, mainly that's, I think that it boils down to more the housing issues and where you're living, right? Because most property tax, I mean, it's based off of the valuation of your property anyway. So I mean, I don't feel like there's a whole lot at stake for either of us on that, but I do think that, I think that this is a broader conversation, actually, a more government interaction. I think a lot of people when they see a local or a rep going up, they might be actively engaged with very particular issues and frames, but they're not as particular engaged of how that person actually votes or how that process looks like. Because a lot of these conversations are a two-way communication between us and our constituents, right? And I think that kind of boils down to the same thing with property tax as far as like local government getting involved with what your school board is doing. I know my property tax just went up like $200-300 a year for something that the school is doing. And so, I mean, yeah, expenses are going up. They're trying to boost that up. So,
Yeah, well, one thing people don't understand, if the valuation of the house goes up, that doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes are going to go up because you have a pie. And if everybody's houses go up, you still have the same share of the pie. But I do think property taxes are put too much on the local.
sorry, give me 1 second.
So anyway, we need to necessarily work with that idea on there. But at one time, places that do not have the big money blocks, like Todd County is one of the poorest counties in the state. We could take some of the taxes from the richer communities and spread it out. So if we put money into the state and we put money into the federal, block grants could come down to the federal. Block grants could come down from the federal to the schools, where you don't put a regulation on, but the state we send a block grant to the state. The state does for education. The state decides how to do it, but they don't put too many regulations on the school to how they do it, just enough to get by. Spreading out the amount of money that we have, that would drop the property taxes. And then we also, with the infrastructure bill that we just did, working on roads, that's a lot of money have come into Wilmer. A lot of money has come into Long Prairie. A lot of money has come in to build the roads, which would reduce the property taxes in the area needed because we are bringing that in. So we can help as long as we just don't over-regulate on that. When we do the regulations, we need to work our way through that type of stuff. So
I like that idea, and I also, one thing about that too is I've heard that, you know, a lot of school districts that have problems with more financials, typically a lot of their money is more held up in administration, not as much with the teachers. Um, and a lot of that too, I mean, just in my district, I know if you go over to New London, the school district where I'm at, those teachers are getting paid like 90 grand a year on average. But you go down to Wilmer, and those teachers are getting paid like 70 grand on average. So and those are just like 30 minutes away, and Wilmer is bigger. So you have these kind of, I think that something that's kind of pushed down more from the federal level would be nice, but I think still having the administration at the state level, or even if it was state level, giving down funding for schools would be fine. And I think a bigger point to that too is with a lot of our schools where you're not locked in per your zip code to where you're going to school either as much now. You can apply to go bring your kids to somewhere else. Makes a lot of sense for me. Like if I had a kid and I was working over in like Litchfield or Painesville or something, then it doesn't make sense for me to send my kids to Wilmer if I can't send them to New London for whatever reason. Some of those things kind of work out. So I think having those options really kind of does open up that conversation for broader opportunities.
okay. Okay, I'm running out of topics, to be honest with you right now. If anybody has a question, we would appreciate it on here. And have you have any more topics here, Josiah, that you?
Yeah, I mean, there's the hot topic of what we're doing with immigration. And I know at your level that's a really huge one.
Yeah.
At my level, that's not as hot of a topic, but still is a conversation. Um,
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, the question is, how I've already stated that we need workers. We're 2.5 million, 3 million workers short right now. And we really see it. One, we can't start randomly sending people out of the country. We can't just, you know,
yeah, we need those workers.
we need the workers,
Yep.
and the logistics of sending 2 million people out of the country just won't work.
Yeah.
We just can't do that. Uh, my opponent voted. Well, they didn't bring it up on the floor, but she supported that they wouldn't pass the bipartisan funding bill because they said uh, the House had already done a perfect bill on there, and they didn't see doing anything else, which basically was punish migrant workers on
Yep.
there. And we need to bring more people into work. We need more temporary works, but we need the people on the border to vet these people. Okay. Now, my idea is if we have a bill, there's something that the Democrats should hate in it, and there's something the Republicans should hate in it. Okay. We have
I'd
to,
prefer everybody could compromise, but
yeah. But I mean, you have to, unless I find it morally repugnant,
yeah,
I would vote for something that would get it across the floor.
Yep.
There is no such thing as perfection. There are times that I could be wrong.
Mhm.
There are times I could be wrong, and we need that. So we need more people that, uh, the legal type of people that gives out the amnesty cards to get us in here. I also propose that we set up training centers on the border as we bring them in, that we train them for these various different types of jobs that we need in this country. Now, there's two types of things. There's spending and there's investing. When we did the interstate back in the 50s under Eisenhower, that was investing. That caused a great boom. Buying golden sneakers is spending, okay, on there. Finding ways to get rid of people that we need is spending. We need to do things so we have growth. Immigration is a growth uh, uh, opportunity on here. We bring people in. The people I know here that are immigrants on there and have their things, they're paying taxes. They're paying into my Social Security.
yeah.
Well, those are the type of things that we need to do. I personally don't know anybody who said that an immigrant has taken their job.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know anybody that's said that.
My favorite one of that is there's famously to Wilmer is one of the restaurant owners downtown in Wilmer. Um, he always likes to say, if you don't want them taking your job, all right, how about you go? They have like the septic systems. He had a friend who was doing that job, and it's like, yeah. Do you want to deal with crap shoveling? Because they're doing that job right now for us.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and they're doing the meat cutting here
yep.
in
They're doing
Long
meat cutting.
Prairie. They're doing the vegetable packing and the egg sorting and the potato sorting
Yeah.
on here. That's what the immigrants are doing that.
And some of
And
our businesses are almost exclusively relying, like they count on having at least, let's say 100 workers coming up. And if they don't have those 100 workers, then they're not going to be able to produce what their business needs to for farming. So, um,
and we'd have dairy farms closing because we
mhm,
have no workers.
yeah,
It was a great thing that the state did was when they gave driver's license to
yep,
some of these people so we could get them to work on there.
mhm,
And I do think most of we've got bad people everywhere, but there's actually lower crime with immigrants than there are with natural citizens.
yeah,
When it comes to immigration, I hear the lie all the time that the immigrants are bringing all the drugs across the border.
mhm,
90% of the drugs that come across the border are coming through U.S. citizens going through
yep,
the ports of entry in their trucks, hidden, or they're coming through a ports of entry at the docks in Los Angeles and San Francisco in Baltimore. That's where our drugs are coming from, and they're not coming from immigrants
Yeah.
on here. If you were a cartel person, would you take an untrained immigrant to take your valuable commodity across the border, or would you take an experienced drug runner and do that? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You don't hire an amateur to handle your big money on
Yeah.
that. And the other thing I've hear is that all this sex uh, trade coming from the border, and the fact that they're actually uh, taking the kids and putting them into sex trafficking.
Hmm.
Well, most sex trafficking comes from a family member or a person that's close to the family.
Yeah.
Most pedophilia is coming from a person in the family. So these are all, uh, I'll call it what it is. They're all lies for political advantage. They're
Yeah.
all lies for political advantage on here.
And that kind of brings me to my, in my district, we have a lot of immigrants with that, but we also have a lot of refugees. So, um, and that kind of it's interesting because it almost feels like the same way that people react to immigrants are the same way that they react to refugees. So when they're saying like, oh, we'll just send all these people back to where they came from. Well, we have refugees from the Ukraine here. Like, if you want to send them back to their home might not be there
Yeah.
anymore. So just to be quite frank, the audacity to just be able to say, hey, let's just take this whole thing and just lump everyone, you know. We're not a homogenous society in the United States, and I don't think we've been a homogenous society
Yeah.
in a very long time. So, yeah, for them to just kind of come after that is just not very realistic for sure.
Well, I live in a very dangerous neighborhood. I'm surrounded by all these two family neighbor, second generation Norwegians and Swedes,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's really dangerous because they may force me to eat lutefisk one of these days.
Hmm.
I
It's
talk
funny you say that. We had people joking about that last weekend about how the Irish or like the Germans when they came over. It was like, oh, these guys are horrible. We don't like these people. Get rid of the immigrants. And it's like it was the exact same situation, just with different nationalities.
Well, it was really kind of interesting that this happened this afternoon. We were talking about different things, and a friend of ours, Sue, was saying that we read about this race riot in 1840, and we were trying to figure out what this race riot was. And the race riot was because they considered the Irish a different race than
Yep.
the British. I mean,
Yeah.
so and we've always done that. We've always taken advantage of the immigrants.
Hmm.
Just ask the Chinese and building the in San Francisco and building the railroads.
Yep.
We've always had problems in bringing somebody new in, and people are afraid of change,
Hmm.
and that's our big problem here. And you'll always blame the people that are changing in there. And I saw a meme today that says, "It's okay if you come into this country, but you got to speak our language. Do you speak Cherokee?"
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know, but we hear people complaining all the time that I don't want to hear people speaking Spanish on the street. I don't want to hear
Yeah.
people speaking Somali on the street.
Yeah.
Well, how would you like to come and have to learn? Let's say you move to France, and everybody talked down because you spoke only English, and everybody expected you to speak French. Or
Yeah.
how'd you like to have to go to China? I
Yep.
mean, that's a hard language to learn.
Yeah.
So, and I have enough trouble with English.
I like the analogy that whenever someone like my aunt was Filipino or is Filipino, and one of the things that I had heard a decent amount was whenever you hear someone talking broken English, you have to realize that as long as you can understand them, they're doing a whole lot better than than where if they couldn't speak any at all. Like they're
Well,
doing, and some of those are multilingual. Like gosh, back like in 2018, I was going on a plane, and there was a Hispanic woman, And I don't remember what country she was from, in some Central American country, but she was a dentist. They had brought her in to do dentistry work. So she had a degree. I think she had like her master's or PhD or something. But it was so interesting because she didn't speak a lick of English, and I had taken like 2 classes of Spanish in high school. But we had talked because I just pulled out my Google Translate on my phone and just talked. And she spoke multiple languages, but none of them just happened to be English. But she was still needed in this country. She was still brought in
Mhm.
to do work. And I think that those interactions, I mean, those are some great interactions to have in our country. So
Yeah. A few years ago, my wife and my daughter was working in the Philippines at the time, so I went over for a month. Went on a tour of Corregidor, and our tour guide was telling a little joke on there because we were all Americans basically on the bus, tour bus, and he says, people that speak several languages are multilingual. People that speak 3 languages are trilingual. People that speak 2 languages are bilingual, and people that speak 1 language are Americans.
yeah,
So,
yep,
uh, and somebody expanded that they're also British, but so
yeah.
it. But anyway, now we've hit immigration. How about inflation?
Whew, inflation. I think that's more of a national issue we have going on here.
Okay, I'm going to give you some facts here.
All right,
Okay,
yep, hit me with them.
okay. Uh, the average inflation over the last 50 years has been 3.5%.
Hmm.
In a forum the other day, the representative for Fishbach says, well, 4 years ago it was 1.9%. And I didn't have a chance to respond to that because it was after I had my thing. And basically, that was during a recession during COVID.
Yep.
Okay. During the first 3 years of Trump, uh, it actually was going up as it was going down on here. It was 2.5 when he started, and it was 3.5 when he got finished until we had the recession.
Mm.
Okay. Now, when it comes to that, uh, we're now at about 2.5, 3%. Wages have gone up 4.8% nationally. So
Mm.
our wages are outpacing the cost. We're never going to have $2 gasoline again because that's not the way things work. You
Yep.
know, eggs are not going to be 25 cents a dozen. They're going to be, Kathy and I, 2 years ago, I bought gas for $4.50 a gallon. Go to Coburn's today. I don't Coburn's, Little Dukes, or go to Casey's or any of these places. Holiday, they're $2.94 here today in Long Prairie. I bought eggs for $6 2 years ago. I bought them for $2 just a few days ago, and they've gone up to about $3 right now today. But that's not unaffordable. And
Hmm.
we do also have the best economy of the world. We're driving the world, but people don't care about the world. We only care about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can't do a comparison to the world on here. But from a national level, COVID caused inflation. The way when it got inflation was at 7%, about 1% of that was uh, because of the inflation bill, and which has actually driven down inflation over the last few years. Our problem was supply chain, having not having the workers on the docks so we could unload the stuff from China. Where our problem was not having truckers to deliver it. Our problem was not being able to get stuff to the market. That's what called, supply and demand. That's called capitalism
Yeah.
on there. So we got to expect when supply is low and demand is high, prices are going to go up. If demand is low, and you got plenty of stuff, prices are going to go down. Target and Walmart just lowered the prices,
Hmm.
and then they were doing that type of thing on there. Also, the last 3 months for I believe it's Exxon might be BP was 190% of profit what they had last year.
Hmm.
Why is that fair? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and the cost for CEOs, the cost in the last 50 years, no, the last 40 years, for the average worker, the wages have gone up 28%.
Mhm.
For the CEOs of the major companies, it's gone up 1,000%. You
Yeah.
know, so I mean, there's some stuffs here that trickle down that's not working. We're not getting the inflation is causing a problem, and we need to work our way through this and understand supply and demand, basic capitalism, price gouging on there, and possibly an unfair tax structure in which I'm paying more taxes than Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Uh,
That always gets me.
yeah, on there. And then plus the fact, if we put tariffs on, China's not going to pay for the tariffs.
Yep. Yeah, we're
The
paying for
company,
that.
the company will pay for the tariffs.
Mhm.
Okay, and if they have to pay a $3,000 tariff on their goods, we'll have to pay $3,500 for the stuff because they're going to raise it to $3,000 plus another 10%.
Yep.
I mean, that's the way it is. Tariffs are going to kill us.
And I think the only dream of a hope of a chance against that would be if tariffs ever did come in and they were substantial, is getting back manufacturing locally in the U.S. for some of those things.
Well,
I you know
there's things until we have our chip factories
oh
built.
yeah, for
When
sure.
we have our chip factories built, then we can have tariffs on chips.
Yeah. Well, and we do get a decent amount of Taiwan, but I do understand what you're saying. Right now we do have a large amount out of China as well. But
China, Taiwan, Indonesia,
yeah,
Vietnam. Okay.
I don't
And
think we'll ever be in a situation where we can ever put tariffs on Taiwan just because of that piece. I don't care how many chip factories we make. I don't think we're ever going to be at
yeah,
a point to do anything there.
mhm, yeah, and Apple's brought back some manufacturing. It's I don't fully support the way Apple is running their companies, but that's one of the things we have to do. We have to bring back the manufacturing here to this country, but we have to have the infrastructure first before we put it on a tariff to somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, for
When
sure.
we put tariffs on China, our farmers lost 20% of their overseas sales because Brazil took it over. So we have to think about that on there because we need international trade.
Yep.
We need to sell our products. Our farmers need to sell their products. We can't depend on just China. We have to spread it out. I agree with that. We need to spread out our where we sell stuff. You know, we have to work on the trades budget, both from the state issue and from the federal issue on there. So those are the type of things is we have to make it friendly to trade with various places in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, it is now almost 8 o'clock. So, do you have any closing statements?
No, I think this has been a really good conversation. Thanks for being open to a little bit of a forum change. I'm not sure how it was compared to your other ones, but
Well, we ended up talking about a lot of different things on there. I was aiming specifically at the women's vote in the last one. So I had a target there. So it'll be interesting to see who was actually on here. I see we've got a bunch of likes and we've had people get on and get off and get on and get off. So not very many questions, but I hope I'll talk to you probably next week.
yeah, sounds
Okay,
good.
sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, AJ. Bye.
Yeah.